Dr. Lucy Ezralou is going to talk with us today about the NTG EDSD, a tool that Jadine's been using with her son, Matt, for several years. It's a great way to help track changes as our loved ones age with Down syndrome. We're thrilled to have you here in the studio with us. First, Dr. Ezralou, I'd like you to introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about the NTG and, more importantly, help us understand all of these initials, because those things, we hear those so many times and it's like the alphabet soup. So if you can talk to us about NTG EDSD and then share about yourself.
My pleasure. Thank you for the invitation to talk about this. I'm a clinical neuropsychologist, so I have about 35 years of experience, no, more than that, 40 years. I don't know how old I am. Working with individuals in nursing homes, community settings, assisted living, who have Alzheimer's and other similar conditions in the general population. And I have close to 30 years experience working with individuals with intellectual and developmental disabilities. So I currently serve as the senior supervising psychologist for the California Department of Developmental Services. So the National Task Group on Intellectual Disabilities and Dementia Practices, and we refer to ourselves as NTG, a group of individuals who many of whom were clinicians, family members, just stakeholders of different types, who are interested in this issue of aging with intellectual and developmental disability. To form the NTG, one of the first kind of mandates we had was to create something that would help bring attention to individuals with intellectual and developmental disability that were declining because of additional issues like suspected dementia, known or suspected dementia. Just to give you a history about the early detection screen for dementia, the NTG EDSD, we used a British tool, the DSQID, which is the Dementia Screening Questionnaire for Intellectual Disability, and I may be leaving out one of the initials to that, but the DSQID, and then was adapted by folks in Philadelphia. So they had an adapted form of this. So we went with that, and that became the basis of the NTG EDSD. We piloted across 11 different sites, one in Canada and 10 throughout the United States. And then in 2012, we published it for general use. Did I answer your question?
Yes, thank you. Hi, Dr. Ezralou. This is Molly. Can you tell us a little bit about the practical use of this tool? If, from what I understand, it is something that charts or tracks changes. Is that correct?
That's correct. It's meant to capture observations of change. So it's not a clinical tool. It's really an administrative, we call it an administrative screening. And so the value of it is helping families and teams identify and track changes that might influence their decisions about how to support the individual more effectively. It is divided in different domains, which we know kind of correspond with dementia. And for instance, it asks, have there been observed changes of the person? Is it the same or worse, basically? If they need assistance in showering, if they need assistance with other activities of daily living. There are questions that relate to language use.
I'm so glad that this tool is available now, because we weren't aware of it, even though it sounds like it's been around for since 2012. Is that what you said?
It's been around.
Okay. And I think maybe Jadine, since you've been using it with Matt, one of the things that I think is so important that you talk about is how you monitor it and the frequency of that. A lot of times we rely on our memory. We look back with things with my brother and say, when did he start doing this? Or when did he stop doing this? And so this tool allows us to really have a good baseline and keep track of changes in behaviors or daily living skills. So maybe Jadine and Dr. Lucy, you can speak to some of the real-time experiences that you've been having.
Kristen, I think that's a very important point. Matt was diagnosed by his neurologist, the neurologist he was seeing at the time, with dementia, with Alzheimer's. He was 39 years old, which is relatively young. It can happen, but it's really young. And I got connected with the NTG after that diagnosis, and was thrilled to find out that this EDSD actually existed. And I went back to him and we went through all the parts of it, and then we did it a year later and there was really no change, and then a year later and there really wasn't much change, very little. And after a few years of seeing no change and knowing how Alzheimer's progresses in our loved ones with Down syndrome, I was able to come to the conclusion that at the best, it probably was a premature diagnosis, if not completely inaccurate. We've continued to use it. We started using it in, I think, 2015. The last couple of years, we've been using it more frequently, and now we take a look at it every quarter, because in the last year and a half or so, we have started really seeing some health changes and behavior changes that are indicating that he probably is on that Alzheimer's journey now. Lucy, how would you recommend to families that are maybe going to start using the EDSD if they start seeing changes, like we're seeing a change in Matt's sleep patterns? What would you say to them to, say, okay, you're seeing this, now what do we do with that information?
So this was kind of, let's get some data to the primary care physician, some information that would help guide the change. Now, when Matt was given a diagnosis at age 39, that is really young, really young. And so we don't think about people being at risk for Alzheimer's type dementia or related dementias with Down syndrome until they're in their 50s, typically. And again, as you said, it could be different in individual cases. But what was a key was you didn't see change where you were anticipating that change would be observed. However, something was going on, right? Something was happening that warranted the diagnosis, even though, we're questioning, about that diagnosis. So one of the ways to use the tool is just say, we see a change. We don't know what the change means, but we're reporting that change because we want this investigated.
So, my Aunt Kathy was diagnosed with dementia in late 2019. And at the time, I had only recently become aware that Alzheimer's was even a thing for people with Down syndrome. And I had no idea that the EDSD existed. It
Right.
sounds like a wonderful, wonderful document, and I wish we had had it. So my question is, have you gotten feedback from families? Because to me it sounds wonderful and it sounds so like operational and something that you can share with the whole team, and I don't have to think about all the different categories. Have you gotten feedback from families and from clinicians, and what has that feedback been?
Yeah, we've had it. Actually, there have been a couple of studies that have been published. And if families want to go on to the website, the NTG website, they'll actually list those studies, which clinicians said it was useful kind of as a first step in identifying that changes might be related to dementia, and then encouraging family members to go on to get additional help from the team as well as from healthcare providers. And our issue has been that we don't have a mechanism by which we've actually been able to disseminate it to family members. I think that is really where the hiccup has been all along. And so it exists, and actually relatively few family members have used it. I think it's much more typically used by staff in certain agencies that support individuals or by clinicians.
I only recently learned about it, I'd say in the past 2 years, and I've been telling everyone I know about it, and hopefully
Good.
people who listen to this podcast will now know about it. So I think it's a good start, but we're gonna help you get the word out.
Yeah, good. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. And there, and therefore, if we get more family feedback, we can always refine or update in order to make it even more useful to family members, right?
Lucy, I'm kind of giggling to myself because I have made an unauthorized adaptation of the
Unauthorized.
EDSD. And the
Uh-huh.
reason I did, I understand that the point of doing the assessments, going through this, is it should be done by someone who knows your loved one well. So
Right,
it makes sense it would be family.
right,
But staff is also involved. And one of the things that I found recently, I have a staff member who works with Matt and is just amazing. He's a young man and he's just soaking up everything we share with him and just wants to learn and stuff. And he's the one who reviews the document with Matt's behavior analyst. And he has, on a couple of occasions, indicated that something that changed, like Matt taking a nap. And he says to the behavior analyst, that's always been the case.
right.
Well, it hasn't always been the case. And because I've known Matt for 51 years, I know that there was a time when we couldn't let Matt nap or he wouldn't sleep at night. And then he never napped. He was just go, go, go from the time he got up until he fell in bed and went immediately to sleep. So
Right.
I added a column that said, I don't remember the exact words, but it's like it's a newer sign, symptom. It's something we've seen, but it wasn't new in the past 12 months. But
Yeah, just
it,
to point out, Jane, there on about a new symptom within the past year, which presumes the person has been assessed on a yearly basis. And the problem comes up with one they may not have been, and then there may be different people who have been doing the assessment over time.
right, right,
One of
right,
the other ways, I mean, that's fine to make it applicable to Matt, of course, is to think about different people filling out the form. So family member and staff. It might even be if a person lives in a residence, the staff and the residents, as opposed to the day program staff, if that's
hmm,
applicable. So you might have multiple versions, and then it's the job of the team to get together to say, how come we had different rings in this? Why is
yes.
it that you've put down has always been the case? And I don't have, it's always been the case. That could be very telling, not only about the knowledge of the rater, but about different settings and different setting factors and conditions that could be contributing to changes that are observed, right?
And that's a very good point. I want to go back to something you talked about earlier. You mentioned like sharing the information with the primary care physician or
Right.
other appropriate medical providers and stuff. I was wondering if you could maybe share some information on what's the best way to do that. I have some folks on Matt's medical team who are very appreciative of the information that we bring to them when we've done the EDSD and we've seen changes. And I have other providers who are like, yeah, I'm the doctor. Don't waste my time with that. I know what I'm doing. So, do you have some tips on if you have a reluctant doctor? Is there a way that we can kind of finesse this to
Yeah,
help them
I do.
understand
I
how
mean,
what
that's
a great
common.
tool it is.
It's a common problem. So thanks, Jadine, for bringing that up. So there are a couple of things. One is you don't want to necessarily hand the provider you want to summarize what are the most outstanding changes that you've seen. By the way, his sleep patterns have changed. So you just kind of highlight because, of course, the doctor only sees what happens in the office,
Hmm.
does not see your loved one at home or in the day program does not have the day-to-day knowledge. So it's one thing to have clinical awareness, it's another thing to have an awareness of how a person's functioning, right? The other thing is on the NTG website, on the homepage, there is a tab that you can, the NTG EDSD in particular, and there's some guidance for physicians. So one of the things, with an interested individual, you can direct them to that. So this is something from other doctors, other, clinicians that kind of have experience, not kind of, they do have experience in the field. And the last thing is, according to your doctor's office, some doctors work with a nurse practitioner or somebody else. And so a phone call to say, I have information to share with my son, daughter, whoever your relative is, physician, what is the best way to share information with the doctor about this?
That's very helpful. I think especially the part about take the information and summarize it. We don't need to give them the entire document, but
No, no.
give them the key points that we've seen. Matt's had 3 choking incidents in the last year, and he's napping 3 times a day now, where he used to never nap. That's what the doctor needs to know. So
Right.
yes, that's very good. Thank you.
Right.
Thank you for bringing up good points, both of you, Jadine and Lucy, about using this as a tool to really use in partnership with our physicians,
Yeah.
doctors, caregivers, whoever, because you're right. Some doctors are very grateful and appreciative. We learned that along the way. They don't have a lot of background in this, and they appreciate when we would teach them about it. And this tool, I think, is extremely helpful. And on the other end of the spectrum, some doctors are maybe, taken a little back by it. But the ideas that you gave and the ways that you gave us to introduce this, and how do I best share the information with you, or what's a way that I can get this information to my doctor, I think that is going to be really helpful for our families to know, so that we really can share the idea of this partnership with anyone working with our loved ones. And I just think this could really help bridge that gap that we need so much in the healthcare, with the healthcare professionals and our families and our caregivers.
Right. So thank you for saying that. So if you have a physician, a practitioner whom you feel good about working with, but they are not receptive, you can make it clear, not presuming to say that that your relative has dementia on the basis of this. You are just looking to support this physician in their work. So, I know sometimes, family members feel that they have to advocate in a way that doctors or other practitioners might feel a little challenged by.
Can you tell us about what age people should be starting to use this? And is it really ever too young to start using it? Because it seems like it's probably something, I don't know, like we could all use in our lives.
Yeah, I wouldn't necessarily do before age 35 for somebody with Down syndrome, but I could see doing it that early. Again, not with the thought, it's very highly unusual for somebody that young to show dementing changes, but there are other changes. And I remember one of the first families I saw in my office, and this is decades ago, um, had a son with Down syndrome, and I remember the mother saying to me, "Joe is just not Joe. Joe is just not Joe." And when I asked what did she mean by that, she said, "Well, I mean, he's just not himself. I mean, this is a guy that was always kind of sweet and mild-mannered and just great to be with and social, and he's withdrawing and he's irritable and he is just not Joe." And a lot of people say that individuals with Down syndrome, you're going to see changes in behavior, changes in personality, even change in some functional skills before you actually see memory per se as an evident change.
Well, Lucy, Dr. Ezralou, I call you Lucy. We've been friends for a
Yeah,
very long
yeah,
time.
yeah,
So
yeah.
uh, I can't believe we could talk for a long time about this because it's such an amazing resource for our families. And before we close, though, I would like to ask, I believe it's in other languages. Can you talk
Yes.
about that?
When last I checked, I think we were up to 12 different languages. So I mean, and that's when I last checked, and that was a while ago. So we certainly, I think, have up to a dozen different languages in which and you can download, a family member can download or do an electronic version of the EDSD, the Early Detection Screen for Dementia, from the website. And it's not copyrighted. So I just want to make sure that people understand it is meant to be useful for you.
I just want to say thank you once again. We appreciate the time that you've given to us today to come and have a conversation about this EDSD, and even more so for the commitment that you've had to families who are looking at aging with their loved one with Down syndrome and other intellectual and developmental disabilities. I'm certain that people who are listening to this episode, if they weren't aware of the EDSD, will certainly want to visit the NTG website and download a copy of it for their loved one. And just as a note, we will have the link to the NTG website and to the NTG EDSD page in our show notes for this episode. I can't say thank you enough to the NTG for having created this tool, because it gave me some reassurance when Matt was not progressing, and knowing that we really weren't on this Alzheimer's journey. And now that it appears that he is, it just helps me to know, where do I need to focus our energies as a support team for him. So I like to end each episode with a quote that's applicable to the topic that we've been discussing. And today, our conversation with Dr. Ezralou was about changes. And I found one from Socrates, if you can imagine. And he had said, "The secret of change is to focus all of your energy not on fighting the old, but on building the new." And I believe that as our loved ones' lives change as they age, we get to choose to focus on the good parts of every day and not on just on the losses that we are seeing. So with that, let's chat again, and
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Lucy. This has
Thank
been
you,
wonderful.
Lucy.